This is Jack Allwild with another Money episode. Today we have very special guest, Tom Brickman, goes by the Frugal Gay. You can find him at the Frugal Gay 11 on X and or thefrugalgay.com. He teaches people how to achieve financial independence through reselling and real estate investing, and he retired at 39 years old with 22 doors. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I had 17 when I retired, so I'm still buying properties. I just bought one this week, but
Cool.
so I'm actually at 23 now. But I appreciate you having me. How are you doing?
Doing great. And before we get into, how you left your 9 to 5, I guess it was like 2.5, 3 years ago. I do like to start off, just give the audience a little bit of background. What was your relationship with money like growing up?
So we were always on a budget. It was a one-income household. My dad was a police officer. My mom stayed home with the kids. I was the oldest of four, and we were never like going to bed hungry, but we also were on a budget, and we could spend $80 on groceries this week and that type of thing. So I knew real quick and real early if I wanted something, I was going to have to work for it or earn it. And that kind of set my tone and got me to where I am today. And that's why I touch on reselling a lot, because as long as I can remember, I remember helping neighbors like set up garage sales and cleaning out attics to earn extra money, because that's how I got the stuff that I wanted.
And how involved were your parents, or how involved were you in the budgeting? Were your parents consulting you at all, or like, was it like a family discussion, or they're kind of just telling you like, this is what we have?
Yeah, I was not involved, but I was a typical kid. And when you pick up something and you say you want it at the store, the answer was, that's not in the budget. This is what we're buying this week. And I just was always raised with if you want it, you're going to have to work for it type mentality. So that was ingrained in us early on. We knew we were going to have to pull up some cash if we wanted something when we were at the store with mom.
I mean, you mentioned reselling a little bit. Can you talk about like what you've done in the past to resell, or how you've helped others resell items?
For sure. So I started reselling online in eBay in 2003, 2004. And I did that out of necessity. I had tuition reimbursement from working at the Gap. So that covered my actual tuition, but it did not cover books or any of that extra stuff. And what I was making when I was working at the Gap was barely enough to pay rent. So I started reselling. I started garage sales when I was younger, but started reselling on eBay probably 20 years ago. And I started with what I could afford, which at the time, my first resale item was a shopping cart full of purses that were $1.50 a piece. And they were just a really good name brand. And I saw like this Nordstrom tag on it. And I'm like, oh, this is good. Somebody's going to want these. I realized nobody wants them at the store, and that's why they're $1.50 and they're ugly. But I bet you if I put these up on eBay, someone will want them. And at the time, eBay didn't even have buy it now. So I sold, I had two colors and I sold two a week. And that paid for my books and my parking pass and all those extra things that I didn't have money for. Buying them for $1.50 and selling them for $60 or $70 and shipping them all around the country was kind of how it started. And no panic set in when I sold out of the purses, because I just found another item and moved over to like Kenneth Cole shirts. And it just was always, what's the next item going to be and what does people want? And that was how I figured out how to get through college without working a third job.
Wow. So I guess when I heard resell, I thought you were just like selling things that you had used in the past, but it sounds like you were actively like searching out for items that you thought you could sell at a higher price. So where were you actually buying them from?
There was a closeout store in Cleveland. They were scattered all around Cleveland, and it's kind of like a TJ Maxx, but it was just a local one up there. And I did resell stuff that I had around, but that can only go so far. So I did actively source over the past 20 years. And it'll go in spurts where I'll buy a bunch of stuff and it takes me 6 months to get it all listed and get rid of it. And then there's times that I'll do absolutely kind of just put eBay on vacation mode and focus more on the real estate aspect. So this is how I was also able to save my down payments, because when I took my first job right out of college, I was working at Target, and then I took a job at the movie theater, and I did that for almost 16 years. They moved me to Texas from Ohio. And I knew if I was going to buy real estate, which I really wanted to, because I had bought one when I was 21, my senior year of college, I knew I wanted to grow that because I saw, hey, this person is renting out my unit. It was a duplex. I lived in the small, ugly one, and I rented out the downstairs, which was the nice one. It almost covered my mortgage. And I'm like, this is nice that this person's paying down my mortgage for me. So eBay kind of helped me get those down payments, because I believe I started at like $32,000 a year, or 34,000. It was real low. And the only way I was going to be able to afford anything was doing some flipping. So that was another pivotal moment for me where I'm like, I want to buy real estate, but I don't have money. So how am I going to get creative and find the money that I need to buy the real estate? And that's why I call it, at this point, it's kind of my safety blanket. And when I have a really bad, expensive month and everything breaks at all the rentals, and I'm putting in air conditioners or furnaces or foundation issues, eBay is kind of my safety blanket.
Wow. So, okay, so shifting a little more to the real estate. So you said you were 21 years old, got the duplex. So what was going through your mind, or how did you kind of, because I think that's very far from a lot of 21-year-olds' mind. I mean, that was like the last thing I was thinking about at 21, I guess. So what kind of got you to think like I'm gonna go do this?
So the duplex was because when I talked to a lender, they're like, you make $8 an hour, we can basically approve you for nothing. And the lender's like, if you take this on, get you up to, like, I think I was approved for $100,000 property at the time. And there was not a wide selection of $30,000 houses available. So that was the key moment where, hey, let's use this rent to qualify you. And I'll tell you this, I had looked at a bunch. This is in Toledo, Ohio. I was a senior in college. And I talked my dad and my grandma into coming out to look at like my favorite three. And it was really down to one that I really wanted. And when they both got there, they're like, this sucks. So one of my, the ones that I really didn't like, I remember standing on the front porch and my grandma's like, you're going to buy this one and you're going to live in the ugly unit and it's going to be a good property for you. And I still own it today. It's been 20 years since I bought it. So grandma was right on that one. And it has been a property that I was thinking the other day, I don't think it's ever not had at least one tenant in it over the 20 years. Like, it has been constantly occupied for 20 years. So even though it wasn't as pretty as the one that I actually wanted, it was the right call. So I'm thankful that they came out and did that. But living in it, I was collecting $600 in rent, and my mortgage, tax, and insurance was $738. And I'm like, I don't know where I can live for $138. And that was how it started. And I got cocky after that one. Bought one in 2005 that I had no business. I held that one for 10 years. I call that one my money pit, because actually when I seen, I lost $22,000 on it and I had to write a check. But that was the beginnings. And then I started buying in Texas in 2009. I moved in 2006 to Texas, and I did accumulate like $17,000 in credit cards. And when I went to a lender in 2008, they're like, you have to get rid of all this debt if we're going to loan you anything. They're like, you have too much debt. So that was another, like, I bounced back to eBay and started getting creative. And I took on a second part-time job and paid off that debt and was ready to go in 2009. So first one was 2009 for me in Texas.
Wow. So what's your portfolio look like now in terms of like how many are in Ohio, how many are in Texas, or?
So it's actually it changed this week. So I have 15 in Ohio currently, and I have 8 in Texas, and that doesn't include my primary in there. And I've done a lot of trading up over the years where I've bought something like I saw right away in Texas when I went to this first house. It was a $75,000 house. My realtor's like, "Oh, you want to bid 80?" And I'm like, "All right, let's bid 80." And it ended up selling for like 86, I think is what it went for. And I just kept getting outbid. So she's like, "Why don't you go after these condos? Because nobody wants them and they're like selling for nothing." So I started with condos in Texas, and she was right because I was buying these condos for 14,000, 18,000, really, really crazy low prices, and mixed them up to them. I held them for a few years, and then I sold them off once they appreciated and turned those into small single families or small multifamily properties over the years. And that's kind of been my, if it's a headache for me or it's something that really doesn't make sense. Like I did sell one in Texas last year that went cash flow negative just because the property tax kept going up, the HOA dues kept going up. Like it was just one of those that made sense when I bought it 10 years ago, but no longer made sense. And when I sold that, I bought 2 single families with that money. So it's been a lot of trading up.
Now, when you're trading up, are you utilizing like 1031 exchanges or not all the time?
Not all the time. I think I've only done one that I've regretted where I shouldn't have done it as an exchange. I should have just cashed out, but I have definitely used that over the years and taken advantage of that.
I actually, I guess we should have stepped back. So like for people that don't know what a 1031 exchange is, can you like go through that and then maybe discuss through your experience, like seeing it firsthand, like the pros and cons of using it?
For sure. So the one that I regret is the one that I'll share about because this was a condo that I bought for $14,500 and I put like $5,000 in and I held it for 10 years and I ended up selling it for 90 and I did a 31 like kind exchange and bought 2 properties with it, like a $50,000 and a $40,000 property. So I used all the money. However, the cost basis on both those properties, because the cost basis on my property was basically valued down to like $5,000 at the point, is very low. So now I have this multifamily that I bought for $50,000 and I put a little money in, like 20,000, but the cost basis is only 22,000 on this now 90 or $100,000 house because I like kind of exchanged it and it would have made more sense at the time to sell it for 90,000, pay the tax, pay the capital gains, and just buy the other ones in cash. However, we live and we learn and we make lots of mistakes along the way. And that's one that whenever people are like, "Oh, you need to like kind of exchange," or "Oh, you need to sell this," I always run those now, having made that mistake and not just paying the tax back then, because it would have been much less expensive now, looking back on it, doing it that way. So it's when you take advantage of one property, you don't pay the tax on it when you sell it because you roll it over into the next property. And it's a way that investors kind of move money from one property to another and continue to expand the portfolio, but you're not actually paying capital gains tax on it till something gets sold.
And just a touch as you've acquired all these properties, typically, how are
Mhm.
you financing them? Is it like the reselling, or is it like was it your 9 to 5 job, or how are you going about it?
Um, so yeah, I had some in personal, like the first couple were in my name, and then I moved it over into a portfolio and moved it into different LLCs. So financing is through like a DSCR loan,
Uh,
which is the for those that aren't familiar with that term, it's what the property is going to generate is how they approve it. I've done portfolio loans where I've grouped a couple of properties together in one LLC and done portfolio loans. So used that equity to purchase others in my portfolio because that equity was used as down payments on those. I bought some in my name. I bought some in cash. It just depended on the deal and the property and what I wanted to do with it. And what I'm doing right now, the majority of what's in my portfolio is long-term buy and hold. I'm not really doing any kind of flips, and that is always taken into consideration. Also, does it make sense if I hold this property for the next 30 years and the interest rate is 8%? And so it's case by case.
Another thing that a lot of people are interested in is like, out of state investing, and how are you actually managing the properties in Ohio?
So that's like the number one DM that I get on X is, how are you buying these in Ohio? Because I am in Dallas, Texas, and Toledo, Ohio is 1,100 miles away. And my answer, and this is why I think I failed on my money pit in 2022. It comes down to the team. And I started building a team in Toledo 20 years ago, and it's taken me like a long time to build a good team. But I can tell you, like, still today, the first plumber I used 20 years ago is still in my phone and I still use regularly. And I don't even waste time calling anyone else because he'll respond, he'll show up, he'll email me a bill, he'll fix it. And I think that takes time and it takes effort and energy because you're only as strong as your team. So I've built up a really solid team over there. And then where I think people go wrong, because I had a client recently, he bought a property in Columbus and he was just leaning so heavily on his property manager. And I'm like, you know what, why don't you hire a landscaper just to go over and mow the yard and have another set of eyes on the property? And when he did that, we saw his property manager was really not taking care of the property and really not advertising it. And I hate having all my eggs in one basket. And when I was in Cleveland, I had all my eggs in this one basket, a similar situation where they weren't really taking care of you. So when I say team, I mean, I have favorite title companies that close my properties. I have lawyers that do evictions if I ever have to do one of those. I have realtors that I can text and just say, hey, will you write me an offer on this property? I have boots on the ground that I can pay an hourly rate and they can go walk by properties, take pictures of properties, go clean up at properties. I have a property manager that does two of them specifically, but I found, and I know that this is an experience across the board, that when you are a 1 or 2 unit investor with a property management company, you're usually the lowest one on the totem pole, so you get overlooked a lot and you're low priority to them because they're going to prioritize the person with 50 units. So that was another reason that I have that boots on the ground to kind of make sure that what needs to get done gets done.
You said only 2 of the Ohio's, but you have 15. So you're like personally like collecting rents and making all those types of calls
Mo-
and
Most are digital, and I have
ah,
boots on the ground to assist with anything that I need there, and they work
okay,
for me.
cool. Wow. Very
I
cool.
think I have 2 non-digital payments out of the 23, so most are digital. And then what I've done there is opened a local account. So if tenants need to pay cash or money order, they can go into the bank and deposit it themselves. I'm not trying to have them mail me a check in Texas or anything.
Hmm. And are you managing all the Texas units, the 8 Texas units?
Those I do. Yeah, those I do. I do have a strong team here, and those are kind of on autopilot. We haven't had a lot of turnover the past couple of years, and they are mostly in neighborhoods that people just kind of move in and stay for. My average turnover in Texas is every like 5.6 years on my units. So
Wow.
I've been pretty lucky with those the last couple of years. And the only issue that really comes up in Texas is like the air conditioning service in the middle of the summer, but that's just part of being in Texas.
As you're acquiring more properties, do you have like a checklist you go through, or are there certain attributes of the neighborhood or the physical house that you're looking for?
I mean, I'm flexible. I own a commercial space. I will take anything on case
Ah,
by case. At the beginning of the year, I was working on acquiring a laundromat,
ah,
which I never envisioned because it would actually be acquiring and running a laundromat. Um, but I stay away from D-class properties, which are kind of like the bottom of the barrel, the roughest neighborhoods where no one wants to rent, and that's what I encourage other people to do as well. It's just it's attractive because of the low price point, but it comes with a lot of issues. I've taken on a few over the years just because I saw like, okay, there's going to be a change here. Even in Dallas, I have one that was a very rough property and neighborhood when I bought it in 2013, but now fast forward 11 years later, and there's the majority of the houses in there are $1 million houses now. So I will take on rough properties if I can see light at the end of the tunnel. But I primarily focus on C-class properties. And I know everyone says that they make more from their multifamilies, and I have plenty of multifamilies in mind, but my favorites are the single families because they come with less tenant issues and less fighting with this person's making noise. So I like the one that I purchased this week. And I do have a checklist for the one that we bought this week. Like I just had it delivered to my maintenance man is going to go drop off like a carbon monoxide detector and a smoke detector today to the new tenant. I don't know if it's in the property or not. There were none observed when they did the inspections. So I like to make sure that they're safe and like to have a conversation with the tenant and make sure that any stuff that didn't get taken care of by the property manager before gets taken care of and addressed. And I get a lot of properties from tired landlords that are just tired of fixing things. So it's usually a lot of fixing what others didn't fix.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the like Class D property that you took a chance on, I think it was 2013, you said, what was it about that neighborhood that you could see like, I think this area is going to change? Like what were the things going on at that time that made you think that?
There were 2 properties that were vacant lots and they were under construction when I was looking in there. And I'm like, if someone believes that this is going to change and is willing, and I think at the time they sold them for like 120 and the house that I was looking at was 40. And I'm like, if someone's gambling and is actually spending money in this neighborhood and spending 120, and it was a really nice looking house for 120, I'll say that. I feel like I'm going to come here. And I actually ended up moving in it for a couple years. And I've been all around Dallas over the last almost 20 years of living here. We had issues, but it was also one of the quietest as far as people weren't stealing my packages. It was just one of those that it does have a rough exterior at the beginning, but it turned out to be a nice little pocket for myself and my spouse when we lived in it. So I think that was why I took that chance. And that person building those 2 houses definitely was the beginning of the shift for that neighborhood. Because I'll say by 2020, like half of them have been torn down and built up, and they build these $500,000 aside duplexes now in that neighborhood is pretty common.
Cool.
They're oversized, huge lots, and they have a really good view of downtown Dallas, which is also, I'm like, this is too close to downtown to not pop eventually.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I mean, is there anything like for people starting out, is there anything you would offer in terms of, words of wisdom or?
I mean, a lot of people are like, go by Starbucks, but I feel like I want to get there before Starbucks is there. So
Okay.
that was the sign that something was going to happen down there. And if I were like, I think literally right now is when Starbucks is being built. There's a Starbucks going up on the corner, like walking distance from the house. So if I waited with the look for the Starbucks, I would have been late to the game. My honest opinion is network. Some of my best deals that I've gotten, like I was buying nail polish from a vendor. And he's like, hey, my mother-in-law died. This is a hoarder house. Do you have any interest in this? Because I had told him, I'm like, I buy houses and I do this. And this man that I bought 25-cent nail polish passed me one of the best deals ever because he didn't want to deal with it. And it took 13 dumpsters. So if I'm starting out, where can you network? Where can you build your portfolio from? I've had the same housekeeper for 14 years now. She started building her portfolio off of people from church just by saying like, hey, I'm an investor. Like she started being an investor after working for me for so many years. And she just networked with people from church. So I think you're only as strong as your network. And if you don't get out and actually chat with people, it's tough because going into a market blindly and inheriting an issue can get very expensive very quickly. And like I said, with my client who had all of his eggs in his basket with one property manager, that's a tough pill to swallow. So one, network, and two, I've found a lot of stuff over the past 20 years where it's like poorly listed on the MLS and the realtor didn't put up pictures. Like my commercial space was listed as a residential with one bedroom. And I'm like, this is a 4,800 square foot one bedroom. Okay, they're just being lazy or something's going on. And it sat on the market because it didn't have pictures. And we went round and round and got a phenomenal deal on it because of how it was listed. And I think that we're going to see that. I'm starting to see a buildup in properties in both markets that I watch, Dallas and Ohio. And I think that there will be, hopefully, I don't think that it's a buyer's or seller's market right now, but hopefully we'll see a shift where some buyers can enter the market. I know the higher rates are scaring them away, but I'd personally rather buy with a higher rate and less competition than be battling with 20 people trying to bid on one property again, which was pretty horrible in 2021 when I was doing that.
Yeah. So Tom, as we're winding down, I do like to ask everyone, what's the best and worst personal finance advice you've either heard or received?
So the worst is wait. And I get that a lot. Like, you have to wait to do this. You have to wait to do this. Now, and it's not about just jumping into something stupid, but if I had waited every time someone had said, wait for this or wait for this, I wouldn't have half the portfolio I have. The best personal finance advice was something that I learned very early on. It's make your money, make money. And like every time I get paid or every time rent hits or every time those eBay payments come in, I'm like, how can I make this $200 make money? Am I investing in stocks? Am I doing an improvement on my property? Am I buying a new property? And I always try and assign a job to my dollars so they're not just sitting there collecting dust, going down in value, just chilling. I want to put it to work. And that was always a goal of getting to financial independence, was making the little bit of money that I was bringing in make money. And I've just consistently been doing that for 20 years. And it's spot on. If you have your money working for you and you have money rolling in while you're sleeping, that's the end goal. So
Awesome.
that's what I would stick with.
Great advice. Well, Tom, it's been great having you on.
Don't,
Why don't you go ahead.
I want to give my one piece of advice. I bought a crack house on eBay once. Don't buy a crack house on eBay. That is like the piece of advice that I try and tell people. It was a very costly mistake. I've made plenty of those over 20 years, but eBay crack houses, they look attractive because they're cheap, but I would encourage others to not start that low. We literally had a shooting in the backyard while we were working on it. So
oh my God.
it's not,
what city was that in?
That was in Toledo. And I will tell you, I was very familiar with the zip code, but I was on the wrong side of the highway. And I'll never forget when I drove up to see it and I got off the highway. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going the wrong way. And then by the time I got in front of the house, I'm like, oh, I bought the wrong house. This is on the wrong side. And my dad's like, how much did you spend? And I'm like, 13,500. He's like, I'd just lose that money and walk away. And I was stubborn and I stuck with it. And it turned out okay. I ended up putting a ton of money into it. It was much more trashed than what I thought when I was feverishly bidding on eBay. But and we ended up selling it. We did owner financing and sold it to the tenant. So it all worked out okay, but it was a painful lesson at the time. And I know, and this goes back to the D-class neighborhoods, those low price points are attractive, but they come with so many issues that it's not worth the headache. So I try and stay away from those.
Yeah. It's about the return on hassle, as they say. So Tom,
Yes.
why don't you give a handoff to the listeners? Where can they go learn more about you or get in touch with you?
For sure. I'm most active on X at the Frugal Gay 11. Same name on Instagram, same name on TikTok, and my website and I do have a weekly newsletter, is thefrugalgay.com. Thanks for having
Awesome.
me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Tom. Until next time.